Dr. Miskowitz,
Here.
Mr. Petruno,
Here.
Mrs. Seward,
Here.
and Mrs. Mendez.
Here. I'll draw your attention to Sunshine Law, statement of videotaping of the public portion of Board of Education meetings, and the public comments statement, and the no smoking or vaping on school grounds. Can we please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance?
It does work. It is working. Yeah. It's working.
Announcements?
I do have one. As you know, we are continuing our work to define what an MTPS graduate looks like. Since we are developing our students to be pros in being prepared for real-world opportunities, we thought this acronym was fitting. Our next step in the process is to elicit feedback from our school community. Within the coming weeks, we will be reaching out to various constituents, including students, parents, and staff, in order to gather their feedback. There are opportunities for each stakeholder group to offer both multiple choice responses as well as open-ended questions, and we look forward to those responses. So in the coming weeks, we will be sending out to those various groups. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ballone. Public comments?
I have none. Would anybody like to speak?
Good evening. Angela Colby from Marlboro. Dear BOE, I am standing here as one of the CPAD co-leaders, and we would like to thank you for voting 2 weeks ago to give us additional time to survey our parents and in relation to all the changes to ESY. This was a big change for ESY since 2018. I think we've always gone Monday through Friday. And so we wanted to hear the parents' concerns and how that change would impact our parents. So we were able to hold 2 meetings, and we were able to discuss all of those related concerns with Special Services last week. And we wanted to thank Special Services for scheduling the time with the CPAD co-leaders and any additional parents that might have voiced their concerns to explain all of the planning and the decisions related to ESY and to listen. So thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Colby. Mrs. Bono?
Hi, good evening. Farah Bono, Nashua Drive, Marlboro, New Jersey. Good evening, President Mendez, Mr. Ballone, members of the board. I was thrilled this week to read the news that we're getting 7%. And as I always come and implore you to go to CAP and take the full waivers, especially with the rising cost in healthcare, I once again am standing here before you, as I have done every year for the past 20 years. Please, our district has had to make sacrifices in the past. We are one of the fortunate ones. Let's embrace this positive change, and then I know you're going to do a great job with the budget. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Bono. Anybody else? Ms. Borenstein?
Hi, good evening. Robin Borenstein, Marlboro, New Jersey. I just wanted to piggyback and thank you for giving us an additional 2 weeks to speak with Special Services, speak with the parents regarding ESY so that, they were aware of the changes and provide any information that they had, regarding that. So I do appreciate and thank you for voting to allow that additional 2 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Borenstein. Anybody else? Okay. I'd like to make a motion to move into executive session for personnel matters and matters of attorney-client privilege. This executive session will be approximately 30 minutes, and action will be taken after. Can I have a second? Ashley? Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. We'll be back.
Help you carry.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Good evening. We're going to get started. Roll call.
Mrs. Palomo?
Yes.
Mrs. Gandhi? Oh,
Yes.
okay. Mr. Hyatt?
Here.
Mr. Alansky?
Here.
Mrs. McCormack?
Here.
Dr. Miskowitz?
Here.
Mr. Paterno?
Here.
Mrs. Seward?
Here.
And Mrs. Mendez?
Here. HIB, Michael?
Yes, the HIB report from the time period February 16th, 2024 through February 29th, 2024, there were 4 incidents reported.
Thank you. Vinny, budget? I'm fine with it.
All right. Good evening, everybody. This is budget discussion number 5. This is just a short discussion just to basically give a recap of our state aid notice, what we got, what has changed, and just basically to give you an overall picture of what you're going to be voting on March 19th for the tentative budget adoption. Okay, so we made out very well. Originally with S2, this was supposed to be our last year. We were supposed to lose about another $250,000 in state aid. What actually wound up happening was we received a $558,000 increase in our aid. So it actually went up. It's really almost a $700,000 swing from what we projected to lose to what actually was increased. So it's actually is a huge help to the district when it comes to basically offsetting increases or just looking at things that you may have left out that you have to incorporate back in. So right now our state aid in 23-24 was 7.4 million, basically 7.5, and now for 24-25 it's going to be a little over 8 million. So the governor did say he was working on doing the funding formula over and just basically re-looking at everything to see how they can fund districts more adequately, even the ones that are over adequate. So we're hoping this is a step in the right direction and it continues from year after year. The Chapter 44 adjustment, also good news. I know the last couple of years we've been getting that where they basically adjust our tax levy and we have to come to the board and basically appeal it with the state and usually approve a budget with the wrong budget number until they appeal it and give us a different adjustment. This year it was actually 0, so we don't have to do anything. There's no adjustment to the tax levy cap, so we don't have to appeal or do anything with the state regarding that. So the original budget that's been talked about in the presentations that we originally proposed was $99,294,277. So we took a couple of looks. We actually, when we got our state aid notice, we met and we took basically a couple looks around overall to see what needs to be added back in, what may be in need, and because basically now with the increase in state aid, you are allowed to add some things back in to basically balance your budget with your revenue and your appropriations. So some of the things we did look at, under advisement when we met with the Security and Safety Committee, we talked about adding a security monitor floater. Basically, this is something that we feel like we can use in district because it's going to basically not take away from other resources that we have around the area. So basically our security supervisor or the difficulties of finding a sub-security monitor to just fill in schools when there's absences. If we have a permanent floater, we know we'll always be covered and we'll always be up and running without taking away from something else to fulfill that need at that time. Another big piece was the workers' compensation insurance projection. With the deviation rate and the mods that we're getting from our insurance broker, basically it's our workers' comp renewal year, and with our actual experience and what they're projecting a $112,000 increase to our workers' comp. Last year was actually a decrease, if you remember. This year they're actually projecting an increase for that portion of the insurance. But they're also, from the reduction, looking at rates that are going well below our projections when it came to your general liability and your errors and omissions and your auto insurance.
Hey, I'm sorry, Vin. Can I ask a question, or do you want me to wait till the
Yeah,
end?
fine.
The workers' comp, how does that work with, can you just refresh my memory, like ESS and the companies that we outsource, like, employment to? Do we pay the workers' comp, or do they?
No, they do. So this would just be strictly for employees that are employed by the Marlboro School District.
So even with using all of those out of, like, district placement companies, we're still seeing an increase in workers' comp?
Yeah, basically it's based off of our recent claims experience, and then it also is based off of the mod rate they get from the insurance company, which basically sets the framework for how much the increase is going to be. I think he did say that like the deviation rate is going up like 0.48 to like 0.65, which is a huge increase in 1 year. And this is also renewal year, and we're in NJSIG. So we basically pool with other districts in NJSIG, and so that's what the rate they're establishing for the group, the pool. Something else that we usually budget for that we actually basically took out was an out-of-district placement. We usually budget for 3. This past, when we originally presented, we only budgeted for 2, so we were figuring we would add 1 back in there. In the event that 1 does come in district, then it needs to go out of district, so we have that built in so we don't have to take from other areas. Charter school tuition, that comes out with a state aid notice. That was actually higher than anticipated based off of the enrollment. I believe we have 9 kids going to charter schools. So basically the state will give you a notice showing what your total financial responsibility is going to be for the year, and so we just budget accordingly. The last one is the big one. This is something that I know we had brought up, and it was in your memos regarding the stabilization aid. So we did get notice back from our stabilization aid application that we did not get the full amount. Basically how they funded it is they see how much we actually lost from the year prior. They measure the difference, and then they basically give you what the difference is to basically make you whole with what state aid you lost from year over year. So they were basically saying that because we received so much last year, that the difference, the offset to make us whole was only another $72,000. So that's what we were getting rewarded out of our, I think it was like a $1.5 million application. So we knew, and in that application it was for school district vehicles, and it was for the replacement of staff Chromebooks, and basically Chromebooks in general. So what we're going to do now is, we were originally going to look at purchase lease options with the $72,000 to get kick-started, but we feel that now that we have this infusion, now would be the best time to replace the staff Chromebooks, because they are at their end of their useful life. They're about 4+ years old, and this would be a perfect opportunity just to get them all in one shot without actually have to going into a purchase lease.
But, sorry, then just, so this wasn't, the Chromebooks was something that was brought into the budget after we were notified of what the state aid numbers looked like?
Yeah,
So-
we always knew we wanted to do something like this. The problem was we knew we had to put it off because we knew we didn't have enough wiggle room based off of what we were getting originally with the 294. We could never fit it in. So we were relying on doing that through the stabilization application we did through the state, because we were hoping we were going to get approved for the full amount and do it through the aid that they gave us. Unfortunately, they didn't. So we were all under the assumption that we were going to put this off for a year, or basically do a purchase lease and start to kick-start it and pay it over 3 years. But since we had this infusion, we felt like this was the best time to just buy something that's a one-time purchase without really having to, get maybe accustomed to having this kind of aid every year, because it can be a wild card. It always is based on enrollment. Our enrollment has been pretty flat, so to see an increase like this was pretty uplifting, considering we've been getting decreases every year. So we felt like what better way to use the funding is to get just one-time purchases that is a need and need to get done out of the way, rather than do something that may be revolving that you may not be able to budget for next year, you may not be able to carry over next year, and you may need to cut. And this really helps our staff. So that's why we came to the assumption of doing that because we always wanted to do that through the stabilization aid, but we only got the 72,000, so we knew we were never going to be able to do that unless we did it over a 3-year, 4-year period of time. So yeah, this is one that we did in basically add with the addition of the state aid, to answer your question. I know, I talk a lot.
No, it's all good, thank you.
So this is basically just showing your source of revenue total, and the difference in amount. Really, the only things that we're changing are your state aid and your local tax levy. And I'll get into what we're doing with the local tax levy. So originally we proposed to go to the 2%, to take the $1 million, and to take the health benefit waiver of the 205. So with the increase in state aid, we actually decided to recommend the middle option. So we don't need to take the health benefit waiver. Basically, I don't want to call that relief, but just basically saying that we don't need to take that full amount to be able to operate efficiently, because we were ready to operate efficiently without that additional state aid. So we feel that that's something that can be left on the table and we don't need to take. So instead of going all the way to the right, where you can see the property taxing, the tax rate per $100 is 1.16, we'd be going to the middle. And at the bottom, it shows you what it equates to. So the left, we're going up to 2% cap is, of course, 2%. The middle would be 3.1, and the far right, which taking everything, would be 3.4. We're feeling that we don't need to take that 205, that we would only need to take the $1 million left over. Now, if you didn't take the $1 million, you would still need to make additional cuts, regardless if you got an additional 558, because we were projecting to lose 2. So if you think about, we built a budget projecting to lose 2, you'd still have to cut about 300 grand, because the total swing was about 700,000. So you would still need to cut if you didn't take the $1 million. So that's our recommendation, is the middle.
And can you just explain not taking the waiver on the right?
Yeah, so basically, in order to take everything, you have to go to the full 2%. We're just proposing taking the $1 million that you actually need to cover the budget, and then the rest would be left over. And that would go into the form of bank capped, and then it would be carried over to the following year. So if you ever needed to rely on that again, it'll be there if you need it, or if you don't need it, it'll just expire eventually. So we just feel like, I don't feel the need to take all that money if I know there's no real intended purpose or use for it. I think it's rather best if it stays there and not really increase taxes as much as you can go, rather just increase what you need instead of just going by taking the money and then banking it for a rainy day.
Because then, oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
What does it stipulate for expiration? Like when this came out last year, how many years do we get?
For bank cap?
Yep,
3 years.
3 years.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Next year would actually not be the last year. Yes, so next year, so the way this works is when you go to 2%, they want you to take the waiver first. So eventually, the 205 gets built into your budget, and then the $1 million that was left over in bank cap, so we would take the difference of that. So we would take, was it 795? And then so what would be left over is the 205, and that it would basically go into your bank cap, and you'd have, next year would be your last year to use it, really. So you would have basically 205 on reserve for next year if you needed to utilize it.
Yeah, and then my question was, then for next year, if we don't get the funding right, then you have that additional money sitting there. Is that what you were saying? That you could use if you needed to?
You could, if you really,
wouldn't
if you
want
really
to,
needed
maybe,
to.
but it's there, correct?
That's not something we look to use without purpose.
Right.
So we would definitely explore the options if we needed it, but if we don't, then we would recommend just letting it go.
Okay.
If you really did not need to. Because if you get another increase in state aid, there really is no reason to, go use the bank cap, and there may be, we may be having a different conversation of going to full 2%. I always recommend that, but it all depends on how it plays out and how much money you actually get from the state.
Okay, thank you.
And then I'll go back. This was just an overview of the expenditures also. So even with the inclusions of what we were anticipating adding back in, your salaries and benefits are still 80% of your total appropriations for the budget. And then I think the increase in the lines would it be technology for the staff Chromebooks? So that line actually went up, the technology one, to include the 275 for the staff Chromebooks.
Vinny, the technology line previously included the Chromebook purchase for the students.
That's still in
now
there.
it includes the additional $275,000 for the teachers.
Yeah,
And that's the bottom line right there, right?
correct.
Okay.
That was pretty much it. That was just really, I know the memo, it's a lot, so we just felt it would be best to just talk about it and discuss and give you a visual. So March 19th will actually be the meeting where we vote on the tentative, and then that'll go to the county for approval, and then in April, we'll do our final public budget hearing. Welcome.
Thank you so much.
Vin, just a quick question. The remaining schools, aside from, we have, what are the last two schools, Asher and Robertsville, that need to get finished with HVAC?
Yeah, so Marlboro's going to start at the bottom line, when we go out to bid, and they'll start mobilizing and start ordering the stuff, and hopefully construction will start. And then Robertsville and Asher are the last schools after that.
Did we have an indication on what the cost of that would be approximately for those two schools if they mobilize together?
I know the projects alone would probably be at least $1.5 million each, because we're looking at Morel just being $1.7 million by itself.
Okay.
So if you just deduct the mobilization fees from that, you're probably still looking at
Yeah.
a little over $3 million for both schools.
Okay. All right.
But the size is different also. So
Yeah.
depends on how many classrooms and
All right.
what's the situation. Because I know Morel has to actually put the units on the roof.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Anyone else? Okay, thank you so much. Okay, Annette, financial and business operations matters.
There's always feedback on my microphone for some reason. Thanks. You got me? The superintendent of schools submits the following resolutions for approval. 1, travel. 2, harassment, intimidation, bullying, HIB report. 3, team teaching, integrated preschool program tuition for the 24-25 school year. And 4, withdrawal from capital reserve. I so move.
Do I have a second? Michael? Any discussion?
Yeah, Val. Okay, so for the integrated preschool program, before being on the board, when I sat over there and it changed to full day, I was not a happy community member because of the price increase. I thought it was astronomical. With that said, I think that the program itself is amazing. I have one child that went through it, and I think it's fabulous. And I have another child that is currently in private, and it's amazing compared to private. But I went home and I did some research. Middletown, right now, for a full day, is charging $5,500. Spotswood is charging $7,500, and they've been charging $7,500 for the last few years. Manalapan doesn't offer full day, but their half-day program is $3,500, so you could say it's about $7,000. Old Bridge is charging $6,000. And I know Vinny, Vinny, thank you, first of all. Thank you very much for our back and forths and all the information, as well as Mary Elizabeth, thank you so much for all your information. I just think that last year we went from half-day 2,500 or 2,900, I can't remember when it was half-day, to 29, to this year being our first full year, full day for 7,400. Next year, asking an additional 600, raising it to $8,000 in 1 year. The kids that are pre-K 3 and grandfathered in for pre-K 4, it's a big hike. So I'm asking the board if maybe we could discuss splitting the difference and doing 7,700 this year and 8,000 next year, so that it's spread out, so that the kids that are already in our pre-K program, the parents don't feel it that much. Instead of it being a $600 difference per year, it's now 3 and 3. Like I said, the program is outstanding. I understand that we dropped 10 students and we're going down to 30. I know that we are obviously, you know, we never have enough money as it is, but when you look at the other towns and what they're charging, I'm torn. I just can't get behind increasing it $600 when we just brought it up such a huge amount.
Is there, sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, is there a number on how many kids are carrying over from pre-K 3 into pre-K 4 in the program? Like, do we know roughly how many that is?
I think it's half, right? I think it's about half of the students.
14 is what Mary Elizabeth just
Yeah,
said.
so about half of the 30.
Yeah.
So then in the timeline that Ashley had stated, which was interesting, is the people that, is it 14 people that will be impacted twice, right? So it went from 29 to 74, and it's then the same people that will be impacted by the 8,000, correct? Like, I don't know how many years those.
So if they were in pre-K 3 2 years ago, they were half-day paying 29. They're now in pre-K 4 paying 74. It's not them, it's the children that are in pre-K 3 this year that
Right.
expected to go into this program half-day at 2,900. But the board approved it, and it changed to full day. They accepted and they came in at 7,400.
Right, because we went to full day.
Right, because we went to full day. Totally agree. Totally worth it as well. But then now those parents are going into pre-K 4 with another hike, another $600 per year. And like I said, it's definitely comparable. You know, it's comparable to privates, but when you look at the other public schools that offer this program that also neighbor our town, I know Vinny had put in Cold Snack for $12,000, but if you look at Middletown, Spotswood, Manalapan, Old Bridge, they're comparable to us too, and they're under.
Do they
7,500.
do they say how many slots they have?
I didn't call each one. I just figured I'd go with, let's split the difference. Like I said, the program's definitely worth it. It's an outstanding program. The resources, I know I'm a mom from that school, I know. It's just that it's a lot to ask in a year.
Can I just ask a side question? With the integrated program, what would it take to, on the buildings and grounds walkthrough, like we had briefly touched on, there was like a integrated pre-K program that would get us more funding from the state, but we don't have the capacity, like the.
Yeah, that's what I talked to you about, is the so the preschool expansion grant that's offered by the state. You would have to basically apply for that grant, and you would have to basically show that you have the space to accommodate universal pre-K for all the 3 and 4-year-olds in your town. You would basically have to show that you have the sufficient room to be able to even entertain having a program, and then you would also need to make sure that you have the staffing for it.
Do we know how many kids that is? Like if it was to be universal?
That I don't have off the top of my head. Do you?
Yeah, just approximate. 5 to 7 versus the 40.
Way more than we have the room for. Way more.
So basically, that would be something that you would need to actually add on addition to Abbott if you were to even consider having a program like that.
Right.
But what kind of funding is it from the state that either?
It's just a grant. It's a preschool expansion grant. You would apply for it. They would either approve you or not, and then they would give you grant money to fund that program based on
Fully
the
fund the program, right?
Yeah, fully
fund the
funded.
program,
So
but we
then
don't have space.
everyone would go.
We don't have the capacity for 500 to 700 kids. No, not in Abbott.
That's where I struggle, because I know it's being offered in a public school building, but because it's not UPK, it's like still private. So when you compare this tuition with other town, like Marlboro private tuitions, it's comparable. So
But I believe, correct me
I
if I'm
struggle.
wrong, by law, I believe we're supposed to have an integrated preschool program, right? For our IEP
Yes.
mandated children. And then you open up spots based off of that because it's a 1-to-1 ratio, right? So,
We need the gen ed kids to have the program. If we didn't have the gen ed
Correct.
kids, we wouldn't be able to have the program. And I'm not saying that we can ask for the 8,000. I just feel like it's a hard hit 1 year right after we brought and changed the whole program. So it's just an idea, something to think over.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. I
yeah,
agree.
I know the reason we came up with the 8,000 is because we were losing 10 slots, so we were just trying to offset, what we would possibly lose for the cost of the program. But we lost 10 spots because we were increasing instruction time for the students, right? So,
And are we still waitlisted? Are there more applicants than spots?
it opens tomorrow.
But
Danielle, did
there's
you have
typically
something you
been
wanted to
more
say?
demand, right?
No?
I'm sure we can fill the 30 spots. We have 30 applications.
Chad,
Yeah.
Chad, I'm sorry, did you have a question? I didn't.
Well, there's always been more demand than we can fill in this pre-K program,
Correct, that's why we
right?
have the lottery
So
system, yeah.
my point is, parents are willing to pay the price. So I understand what you're saying too, but I also don't want the district to lose money. So I just want to make sure that if we're not pricing parents out so that we won't fill the spots that we need to meet our obligations for the IEP. It sounds like that's not possible.
I don't think that, and that's not what I'm trying, I don't think
Okay.
we'd be pricing parents out at all. I just think that it's, as a advocate for parents and looking at the cost and what's happened over the last 2 years, it just seems like a big hit, and I was thinking maybe we could split the difference.
I mean, I have no issue going to 7,700 for this year, if that's how the board wants to go about it, but I can't promise it'll be 8,000 next year.
Okay, thank you, Penny.
You're welcome.
Can I just ask the question, I think, that you had, Chad? Is there typically a wait list? I'm just curious. Always a wait list? There was one last year? Okay.
Yeah, we've never had an issue with filling the spots.
So then price is not really a concern then, right?
No, I would just amend the,
So wait, then so then that means that the price is truly not a concern, right? I
the
mean, if
price is a
we're-
concern because you're operating at a loss at 8,000, even if you.
No, not for us. I mean, I get that we have to go to 8,000. I'm saying for parents, right? If people are waitlisted right now for the spots, then
Yeah, I
that
mean,
is not really a concern.
I can't really speak to that
Do
because.
parents know that we're proposed 8,000, or they think that they're applying for a program that's 7,400?
No, they were made, because when we spoke with Mr. Perno, we told him that would be.
It was put in for a proposed 8,000?
Yes, because the language
Okay.
basically said that it would be 8,000 or less depending on board outcome. So
Understood.
it was already said at the top it could possibly be.
Okay.
So they were aware.
Good to know.
But I can't speak to if they're not having trouble paying for it. I don't, some people just outweigh, is it cheaper to send them to before and after care, or is it cheaper to work? So I just know there hasn't been an issue with filling the spots for the lottery.
Okay. Any other discussion?
So I would just amend number,
We want to do that?
okay, yeah.
Okay. Any other discussion? Okay. So,
So I'm going to take a quick vote to change it to 7,700, right? You wanted, was it?
I didn't motion.
yeah, Ashley did
I
motion.
just did a discussion. I
It
didn't
was just
motion.
a discussion point.
And
If-
honestly,
Okay,
now that I
so-
know that it was already stated by Mr. Perno that it was 8, and I feel a little bit better with it.
Okay.
Yeah, because you didn't make a motion, Ashley. You just said, it was
I
just a
did not
discussion
motion, it
point.
was just a
Okay.
discussion.
So we'll
Okay,
vote on the
I so
8,000. Okay, so roll call.
Mrs. Belomo?
Yes.
Mrs. Gandhi?
Yes.
Mr. Hyatt?
Yes.
Mr. Lalansky?
Yes.
Dr. Miskowitz?
Yes.
Mr. Petruno?
Yes.
Mrs. McCormack?
Abstain from myself on 1, and no to 3, and yes to everything else.
Okay, Mrs. Seward?
Yes.
And Mrs. Mendez?
Yes. Okay. Chad, curriculum matters?
Give me 1 second. The superintendent of schools submits the following resolution for approval: 2024 extended school year program, ESY. That's it.
I so,
What do I say?
I so move.
I so move.
Do I have a second? Danielle? Any discussion?
No.
No, I just want to thank everyone for, you know, all the meetings that they had the last 2 weeks with the individuals that, you know, that it pertained to.
Madam President, I wanted to say something as well.
Go ahead.
I wanted to thank Mrs. Tyrone for doing her due diligence in setting the ESY program up. It takes a lot of time, and it takes a lot of knowledge to set up these programs. It's not something that comes about simply. And so I do apologize for the parents that were held back waiting for a new answer this time, but I do, you know, it's going to be the right thing for Marlboro at this present time. And thank you, Mrs. Tyrone, for doing such a good job on setting it up. Super.
Any other discussion? Okay, roll call.
Mrs. Gandhi,
Yes.
Mr. Lansky,
Yes.
Mrs. McCormack,
Yes.
Dr. Miskowitz,
Yes.
Mr. Petruno,
Yes.
Mrs. Seward,
Yes.
Mrs. Belomo,
Yes.
Mr. Hyatt,
Yes.
and Mrs. Mendez.
Yes. Michael, personnel matters?
Personnel matters. We have 4 resolutions, the 4th being an addendum. I'll start. Personnel matters. The superintendent of schools submits the following resolutions for approval. 1, resignation. 2, employment, instructional assistant. 3, suspension with pay. The addendum, number 4, termination of employment contract. Be it resolved that the employment contract of the following individual employee ID number 2094 be terminated effective March 28, 2024, in accordance with said employee's contract. I so move.
Have a second?
Second.
Dr. Miskowitz? Any discussion? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Petruno,
Yes.
Mrs. Seward,
Yes.
Mrs. Belomo,
Yes.
Mrs. Gandhi,
Yes.
Mr. Hyatt,
Yes.
Mrs. McCormack,
Yes.
Dr. Miskowitz,
Yes.
Mr. Lansky,
Yes.
and Mrs. Mendez.
Yes. Okay. Executive session resolution. I'm so sorry. My eyes went to the back of the page. My apologies. Old business. Anybody have any old business they want to discuss? Any new business?
Just wanted, no, you.
Go ahead.
Yep. Ironically, the resignation that we accepted tonight is our bus driver, so I just wanted to give a quick shout out to Miss Stacy for always looking out for the kids and making the morning and afternoon drop off and pick up a pleasurable experience for them, so I wish her well. Thanks.
Thank
Madam
you.
President, I have a question. It's not even a question, it's a concern that I have with the HIB reports that come out. I already spoke to Mr. Balone about it, and I wanted to share what being transparent, I want to share with everybody. It's my understanding that we should be getting more information about the HIB, the actual HIB process, because in actuality, we can vote to change a HIB. That's our right as a board. So, but the way the report is written presently, we don't know what's going on with the individual things. So I'm going to put together an email to Mr. Balone and yourself, Mrs. Mendez, for things that I think should be added. So if anybody thinks if you have any other concerns that you would like to add to my thinking, please send me an email and I will put it together and I'll share it with all of the board when prior to me sending it to Mr. Balone for his approval.
What type of information could
I'm
we?
looking for a summary of what has gone on with a specific bullying case, not a child's name or anything like that. I also want to find out what kind of remediation is being done. It will say counseling, but that means nothing. Like what, who's doing this counseling? Who's, the bully and the victim? They're children. Both children need help. The child that's been the victim needs to have some kind of support, and the child that's being a bully or being said that they're a bully, they have to learn, be taught how, why they're doing things wrong, because they don't, we're a K-8 district. These are babies. These are babies. And some kids are, they're learning it at home. Some kids are learning it at school. Some kids are learning it on the street. But it's our job as the board to protect not just the educational environment for the children, but the mental and emotional. So I think we need a little bit more information. So that's, I'll be, putting forth something.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, as far as, supporting the students and the faculty and staff, I'm completely on board. Is there any, Mark, if I could just ask you, is there any concerns with, like, this type of request? Are we, does this broach going into day-to-day operations, or?
Yeah, so it's a good point. I was going to discuss under legal in closed session some of the issues surrounding the concerns raised by Dr. Miskowitz. So why don't we save that for the closed session?
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Aldo, I think you were going to say something too before?
Oh, yeah, for new business, I just wanted to, just follow up on what the policies that we had passed last week, or at the last meeting. Have we had any, has there been an update on the policies that were put into place with the Education Foundation?
Has there been any update since
Yeah,
the last meeting?
Since the policy was put in terms of, did we, have we received all the documentation that was on the, outlined on the paperwork?
We have not. Did you get anything? Mr. Balone, I know you had a conversation.
I did, and I want to thank Mrs. Salachi, current president of the MEF, for the meeting that we had, but no, we have not received any documentation.
Okay, so what exactly does that look like now? What does the path forward look like as far as the administration and?
Just one thing that we just wanted to say, we're going to go back into executive for the legal implications on that, Aldo, but Aldo's question was directed about administration, but there's a legal aspect we're going to talk about with things that we didn't receive yet, the documentation. But please answer Aldo, whatever he had.
Sure. As far as the path forward, obviously, we're going to talk about following our board policy, but I would be remiss if I didn't share that the MEF has been very cooperative. Mrs. Salachi has reached out to me multiple times. In fact, she has put together a presentation that I just received today that she would like to come present at some point, perhaps maybe at the next meeting, to kind of share what the MEF does, what they're all about. So I intended to talk to everyone about that as well. So that's really the only update I have at this point.
I'm sorry. So her presentation, you'll share with the rest of us?
I will.
Okay. Aldo, do you want to talk more about it? I know we're going to talk about some pieces in executive, but is there something else you want to ask out here?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just wondering, where, essentially just where we stand with it. I'm trying to see, what it looks like with the policy in place. If the organization is not going to follow district policy, then what does it look like in terms of, the administration also following the policy?
Yeah, great question. And so I guess you're going to share that, whatever is included in that presentation, with the rest of us, so we could talk through it in executive?
Yes, I just received it today, so I haven't even, I did a cursory look, but I do want to go through the entire presentation, but it will be shared with you.
Okay.
excuse me, did you say that she wants to present to us or to the public?
To the public, at a
Okay,
public board
good.
meeting.
Okay, good, thank you.
Any other business? Okay, public comments?
I have none on my list. Would anybody like to speak?
Ms. Fitzsimmons?
Megan Fitzsimmons, Atlantic Highlands. I just wanted to reassure you about the lottery. This is the lottery students only. If they started as a 3-year-old the last year of the half-day program, that means they're 4-year-olds this year, and they're going to kindergarten. So there won't be anybody, the impact, there won't be anybody from the half-day tuition that will have the second increase, because they're all going on to kindergarten. So I just wanted to say that.
Thank you.
Yeah, because it was just fun. Yeah, I had made that clear. Val asked that question, and we counted it out.
I did.
100% understood. It was more along the lines of the people who are pre-K 3 this year will be pre-K grandfathered in for pre-K 4 and experience a $600 raise. That's what I was trying to make, and Val and we had explained that. Thank you, Val.
And we usually always have a waiting list, because we do screen those students. Some years it's 5 kids, some years it's 20, so it really just depends once it's posted to the district's website. But I've gotten a lot of calls about it, so there's certainly definitely an interest in the community. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comments? Okay. All right. Executive session resolution. I'd like to make a motion to move into the executive session for matter of attorney-client privilege. It is anticipated that this executive session will be about 60 minutes and that action will not be taken in public after the executive session is closed. Can I have a second? Okay, Ashley, all in favor? Any discussion? Any opposed? Okay, meeting adjourned. Thanks for coming. Oh, sorry. We're going into closed session. It's not adjourned. Have a good night. Thank you.